Is crypto dead?
Capital, technology, and culture. And if you look at those three things, I think there are good ways to identify whether or not you continue to see the momentum. Gives you then a signal to say, is this something that you want to continue investing in or looking at to invest in or considering to enter, right? What is a good predictor of innovation adoption? It boils down to three things.
Got the whole crypto world going wild. Money blockchain, she's the queen of the game. Stacking crypto like it's her claim to fame. If you want success, then take a look away.
All right, everybody, our guest today, Michael Lau, he's the chairman of Consensus. One of the, I would say, best crypto events in the world, and I'm really excited about it. He spent over decades navigating global finance and crypto from the inside, from JP Morgan, CoinDesk, Bullish, and many, many more. And today we're going to talk about how institutions are navigating this really volatile market, and are we going to make money in 2026 in crypto, Michael?
I think it's going to be an exciting year ahead.
Yeah? Okay. Well, Let's talk about the market past 1 year return. Silver has been up 171%, gold 76%, copper 36%, and crypto is down 24%. So people are like, is crypto dead?
Look, I don't think it's wise to kind of look at a single short window to kind of decide what you want to do long term. You know, I've been in the space now for about 6 years, and there's been a number of cycles that have happened within that short period of time. I can't say that I've seen as many cycles in a short period of time as I have when I was traditionally in equities. But I do think that if you look at some of the underlying things, and I think I'd probably want to approach this a little bit from an ecosystem perspective as well. I think what's most interesting about this particular space is that it's kind of like one of those places that has a unique convergence of capital, technology, and culture. And if you look at those three things, I think there are good ways to identify whether or not you continue to see the momentum that gives you then a signal to say, is this something that you want to continue investing in or looking at to invest in or considering to enter, right? From a capital perspective, I think it's been very clear that over the last 2 years, you've seen more and more of that institutional capital being deployed. You started to see more institutionalized products enter the market. You saw that the joining up of traditional equity markets and also the digital assets markets with the form of these ETFs, right? And so you're starting to see, again, capital that is being deployed in ways that weren't being deployed just 2 years ago. I think the other part of it is the technology, right? If you think about how technology is being built and adopted over time, I'd say that it's just continuing to pick up momentum. I think one of the things that I look at quite a bit are what are the projects that people are building, what are the problems that people are trying to solve for. And I think the whole industry has moved towards things that matter, right? The ability for people to be able to have a way to transmit, to be able to pay, to be able to do things in a faster, cheaper, more accessible manner, out of stable coins is an incredible focus of energy and time of the whole industry this past year. And I think that, again, from a technology perspective, it kind of shows to me that there's still a very strong underlying momentum towards the right problems, right, that are being solved and this technology taking further root. And the final piece is the cultural aspect, right? I think that is the community sense continues to strengthen. I do think that builders are still coming together. I think people are still doing a lot of partnerships together. And to me, that's very promising. So, I think if you kind of take a step back and look at it from this kind of more ecosystem builder perspective, I think there's a lot of really healthy signs that the ecosystem continues to grow and that we continue to move forward towards the right things in the same direction as we have been for a while now. And at the same time, hopefully people that are investing and that are spending time thinking about markets start to understand that as a way to factor into how they think about the ways that they invest. Because at the end of the day, investment is a multi-factor decision, right? This is just one of the main factors that I think matter. But there are other things that are kind of outside of the control of our industry, but also outside the control of us in general. So I think to a certain degree, it's trying to look for things that are a bit more fundamental. And I'd say that from that perspective, I still think that this is a place where there's an incredible opportunity for more growth.
对科技跟金融有兴趣的朋友要注意了，2026年的2月9号，香港有一场我觉得非常厉害的活动，它把传统金融、加密货币、科技圈、创投圈里面最重要的角色全部聚集在一起。主办单位呢是亚马逊旗下的 AWS、Crypto.com Capital 跟 Kronos， 会参加的人来自 HSBC、JP Morgan Connexus、UBS、Solana Foundation， 还有 Oros Ventures， 这些都是世界上最顶尖的角色。你需要这场活动呢，会听到资产代币化的实际应用、投资趋势第一手的观察。这一些专家呢还会分享世界上面的大钱，也就是机构的资本到底怎么判断接下来的趋势。你看很多全球的大型金融机构都很用力的在研究怎么把各种的资产代币化，怎么帮助资本市场提升效率，增加流动性，也让更多的资产更灵活的流动。那这已经就是势不可挡的潮流了。所以如果你也想要知道机构现在到底怎么看代币化的趋势，想要直接跟第一线的专家面对面交流，想要知道呢下一个阶段的世界金融到底会长什么样子呢，你又要怎么把握，这一场活动就一定会给你很多很多的启发。资讯栏连结点进去，邦妮区块链的观众免费参加，你就选择 AWS 邀请，错过真的很可惜啊。
You know, when you think about how markets work, there are a lot of factors, and there are a lot of different things that are happening. And I think one thing that's very clear is that what happens within the crypto world is not in isolation to the macro kind of setting. And I think it's important to know that that's a good thing, because it means that we've become more mainstream as an industry, as an asset class, that there is, for example, a bigger picture that we're being a part of, right? So looking at markets, I think it's important that you understand kind of where you are, how you approach, risk, how do you approach the macro setting, as well as what's happening within the industry.
So your thesis hasn't changed?
For me, I mean, I kind of joined this industry 6 years ago. I'm still very excited about it. I don't think that's changed very much. I think I've certainly gotten older being in the market for 6 years. But yeah, no, it's something where I feel very strongly conviction-wise about what the technology can do.
When you talk about technology, can you elaborate a little more on what are the, things that excite you the most? Is it stablecoin, prediction market? What are signals and what are noises?
If I were to summarize kind of what is a good predictor of innovation adoption, it boils down to three things. Is it faster? Is it cheaper? Is it more accessible? And I think what we found with stablecoins is that it's answered that for a couple of different use cases. For some people, it's a question of transmitting value. And is it faster and cheaper, more accessible than going to a bank, using another more traditional route? For some parts of the world, yes, it is way faster and way cheaper, right? And then I went to another use case, which was quite funny because this is not usually what you talk about, is I went to some places in the world where the US dollar was the store of value that people have been using for a long time. And all of a sudden, stablecoins became a faster, cheaper, more accessible way of getting to the store of value. So we don't really talk about stablecoins as a store of value thing. We usually use that in the context of Bitcoin. But in this situation, that's actually something that it's solved for much faster and better and cheaper. And so I think there's interesting applications stablecoins have done that I feel are very, very unique and kind of quite cool. And then the other side of it is also, I think there's a lot of new things that are happening around the layer 1, layer 2 side of things, right? I think one is just it's faster. We've always been talking about how fast can blockchains work to be able to do the kind of transactions that we're thinking about for more bigger financial systems. But also, I'd say that there's also now a large focus on privacy, which I think is very important. I think there's a little bit of this idea of, blockchain for a long time was talking about anonymity and kind of like I own, for example, a wallet address, and maybe you disclose, maybe you don't, doesn't matter, but your actions on chain are still very transparent, right? And that's kind of where, for example, when you think about how people are allocating or investing in the space, privacy in your actions is also quite important. And your ability to decide on how to think about that is also very important. So there's a lot of newer projects that have come to the forefront, or existing projects that are now focusing on privacy more. So that's another key area that I think has emerged over the last 12 months that I think are getting a lot of people excited and could be enabling to a lot of different things.
We're talking about big pictures and institutions. They're obviously looking at, a different scale. But for retail investors, they want to know, how fast do I need the blockchain to be? Like they're not really seeing the back end, right? Well, you guys are talking about how fast it is, how cool it is, but in reality, they want to know if there's a chance for them to make money or, make a good investment. Is that chance getting slimmer with all these institutional players getting involved?
The individual retail interaction with this technology in an ideal world, to me, is almost invisible. That you don't even realize that this is happening in the space. Like there's this one example of a company that I know of who is doing like traditional payments, and if you were to use them, you'd think it's just general payments, but they're just using stable coins in the back to transfer things back and forth to make it all work. And so for you as a retail user, you don't even know that there's blockchain being involved in this. And I think the idea of having these things solved for so that they can, allow companies to provide better services and better products to retail users is, I think, where we're going to find more and more of the application really, rubber hitting the road. And I think that's also where it's going to be most beneficial, because if you can bring costs down, that means the services that retail users are asking for become cheaper, right? And so I do think that there's an element of that. People should keep in mind that this is not just simply an institution conversation that has no effect on retail.
Is there anything that might happen in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months that would change your mind?
I mean, the truth is, like, it's so hard in our industry to kind of, predict 6-12 months what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I've tried that a couple times and was wrong every single time. So, the one thing I can say again is a little bit of this. I know it doesn't sound like a long time, but 6 years kind of being in this industry has kind of only, for me at least, kind of furthered my conviction around kind of the underlying technology, and that, there are different seasons to this industry. There's different flavors to kind of what's happening right now. But that hasn't changed, what I focus on, what I am interested in, kind of where I spend my time and attention.
It sounds like you don't check Bitcoin price every morning.
You kind of have to look at it every now and then, right? I think if all you're doing is looking at price, then, you're going to be constantly on a roller coaster. If you're looking at that together with other factors, and that's kind of why I started off with this idea of what are some of those more fundamental factors that I think about as, kind of more of an ecosystem perspective that I think are healthy signs of a strong ecosystem. To me, it makes me feel a lot less, or it dampens the effect of the roller coaster, if that makes sense.
You live in Hong Kong, right?
Yep.
Are you from there?
So a lot of family roots from Hong Kong.
Nice.
But I was born in Canada and moved here 18 years ago. So to me, Hong Kong is home. This is where the city that I love. And it's been a fascinating place to be part of.
I think the recent years we've seen other financial powerhouses coming, like Singapore, UAE. They're all trying to compete in this, crypto industry, the crypto hub. From what you are seeing in Hong Kong, you think the rest of the world actually recognize how important Hong Kong is in crypto? Or is it just, within Asia, we recognize that?
Yeah, I'd say that it's interesting because it's a little bit based on who you ask. And I'll kind of put it just in two very simple categories, those who are in Asia and those who are not in Asia.
Yeah.
For those who are in Asia, I think who have an understanding of kind of how markets work around here, I think there is a recognition that there are certain centers of finance that matter quite a bit, and that Hong Kong is definitely one of them. I think when you're not in Asia, you tend to forget that there's a significant part of capital flows that are coming from this area of the world and that Hong Kong stands in them. So for example, when you think about traditional markets, Hong Kong ranked as the #1 global IPO market last year, right? Most people probably don't realize that, but that's actually, like, if you just look at the data, that's kind of what it is. And so when you're thinking about TradFi, Hong Kong already maintains a very significant position in the global traditional financial system. And so when you think about crypto and blockchain and digital assets, like one of the biggest themes is this idea of TradFi and crypto converging, right? And if you think that that's one of the big themes that matters, then it matters where it happens. And if it's happening in Hong Kong, where it's already one of the top global financial hubs in the world, then there's a level of significance around that. And I think that's been quite interesting to see. I think the other thing that's worth noting is that, and people miss when you're outside of Asia, is also the fact that Asia has been in this kind of regulatory clarity journey a lot longer than most people have, right? Like I was
Explain
in Thailand.
that.
Yeah, so I was in Thailand just 2 weeks ago, together with a partner to talk about Consensus, and the partner that I was working with reminded me that, hey, Thailand issued their first set of policies and regulations related to virtual assets back in 2018, right? And then you think about Singapore, it's like since 2019-20, if you go around the region, you'll realize that most people have started regulating this thing several years ago, whereas the clarity that we're starting to see from the US is just within the last, year and a half. So I think people from outside of Asia tend to forget that there's been a lot of time and energy that has been put into this. And even within Hong Kong, it was in October of 2022 that the government put out a policy statement that says that Hong Kong wants to be a Web3 hub. And it's been moving in that direction since. And it's provided regulations for what we call virtual asset trading platforms. So those are like exchanges. Provided now also regulations for stable coins. A lot of these things moving a lot faster than what we've seen in some other parts of the world outside of Asia. And so I think that's also another key thing that people tend to forget, is that this journey has been pretty consistent and has been there for a while. And I think that's also, again, kind of creating some pretty cool foundations for building businesses and projects and technology in the region.
When I think of Hong Kong, I imagine old money. And people say old money are, a little more conservative compared to, let's say, tech-focused countries or regions. Does that affect how, legislations move forward in Hong Kong, or just the mentality in general? Is it different?
I'd say that with Hong Kong, there's a mix. There's certainly a lot of old money that is still here. But the one thing you got to remember is that Hong Kong has basically, in my opinion, been built by a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of really good, policy support around that. And I think that entrepreneurship also stems into some of the more newer technologies. And a lot of people, have seen, for example, the rise of, for example, Chinese internet over the last decade and a half. And a lot of that also comes down over here to Hong Kong. And so the capital here, I think, comes from both old and new. And I'd say that there is a reflection of that you're seeing here. Because Hong Kong, for example, before we even start talking about blockchain and digital assets, fintech has been a core part of the conversation here for a while, right? That's kind of the precursor to what we're talking about. And that's also been something where Hong Kong has been at the forefront of and has been pushing forward. And you see, for example, again, going back a little bit, traditional banks offering really interesting digital solutions for what they were doing back in 2010s. So I don't think it's just old money. I think it is a mix. But I do think that, to your point, like the one thing that I've noticed about how, I guess, policy and regulation kind of gets rolled out here in Hong Kong is that they're very measured and they're very considerate, and they spend a lot of time studying and understanding, so that when they do something meaningfully, but they also do something having considered a lot of things. And so the pace of it is something that also reflects that too. And I think that that's also part of what you kind of see in terms of the journey and how it's unfolded over the last couple of years.
I think that's in the culture as well. The Asian culture, they are a lot more careful when it comes to things, and they evaluate, they take their time. And I assume, you talk to a lot of founders from the US, they probably want to, get into the Asian markets, but Asia is a whole different beast. Like, it's so different. What are the questions they're asking, and how are they approaching this?
Yeah, so I'll tell you one of the things that I really, really wanted to push when we started Consensus Hong Kong was that Hong Kong is kind of uniquely 4 hours flight distance from pretty much the entire region of Asia, right? So the intention was, how can we make this as a gateway to the region, so that when people are flying over from the US or Canada or Europe or Middle East, that they're able to get a pulse of what's happening across the region. And I think that what we've found is that most people, again, find Asia just a lot of ground to cover, because you have different sets of rules, you have different sets of societies and cultures, and different journeys in terms of their adoptions of the technology, that it takes a lot of time to really understand what's going on. And also, it's important to figure out who are the right sources to understand this from, right? Like, who are the authoritative voices talking about what's going on? And so I'd say those are some of the bigger challenges, that most people have understanding Asia. It takes time, it takes energy, and that's kind of why we thought, hey, this could be a really good opportunity for us to bring together leading authorities of what's happening in these different markets and these different geographies to Hong Kong, so you have a convenient way to be able to meet them, and then decide, hey, you know what, realizing maybe I need to do more stuff in Korea. I should do a deep dive into Korea, and then you should go to our good partners over at Korea Blockchain Week later on in the year to find out more about what's going on. So I think there's elements of that discovery and energy that you need to have if you want to understand what's happening around Asia. If you're looking at capital flows, Asia is also a powerhouse when I think about where capital is being formed, raised, deployed, invested. And so again, if you're in kind of the financial world, it's really important that you're active in this region, right? The fact that Asia as a region has, various different countries, various different regulators, etc., means that there's going to be friction across different markets as well. And that's where we've seen a lot of people actually entering the space to say, hey, look, we've got some interesting solutions to help with that cross-border, whether that's trade, remittances, payments, whatever it might be. And I think that, again, think about demographics, think about capital flows, think about opportunities. Like, that's, I think, uniquely large in Asia versus some of the other regions of the world.
I love that. I think Asia is really, really important, but I just want to make sure, people see it that way too.
Yeah,
and
for
coming
sure.
from you, it's very reassuring. Okay, let's talk about Consensus. What are you most excited about? Who do you want to listen to? Any crazy stories prepping for this event?
The first one was that we were very surprised at how well received the first inaugural Consensus was last year. It was the very first time bringing Consensus to Hong Kong at this scale, and we ended up selling out 10,000 people, right? So
Wow.
That was a really great first time around. So one of the big questions is how do we continue to grow it? How do we continue to make it attractive and hopefully bring more people over this time around? So in terms of what I'm excited about, one is I think we've continued to stick to this vision of just really high quality content at scale, and really being, I guess, the place that brings the industry together. I think one thing I'm particularly proud about this year for Consensus Hong Kong is that we've brought in a lot of the founders and senior management of a lot of the layer ones all into the same place, right? Whether that's Solana or that's Cardano or that's Ethereum or whatever, we've brought them here. And so for somebody who wants to understand the industry or want to understand everything to do with programmable blockchains, we are the place to bring the most important people of those different chains together. I think that's one thing that's very exciting. The second thing is that, and so we've also expanded the content this year to also focus on things like what's happening in AI, what's happening with regards to AI and blockchain technology coming together. So we're excited about that. I think the other thing that I'm quite excited about is, again, kind of the public support that we're getting from the government around this conference. So, for example, last year we had the Financial Secretary of Hong Kong give the opening keynote. He's coming back again in person to give a keynote, but actually the opening address this time is going to be a virtual one given by the Chief Executive of Hong Kong. And he'll be officially presiding over this, even though he can't make it in person. But that's really, really, again, kind of a great signal that Hong Kong really cares about this industry. So those are some of the key things that I'm quite excited about within the conference itself. The other thing is also, as of this morning, we just counted over 310 side events that are happening throughout the city. That's an enormous number of side events, I have to say. And it's cool because, again, I mentioned earlier, Hong Kong is home. And I'm really glad that people see this as a great product market fit to convene in Hong Kong and to just really see Hong Kong for all it has to offer, and I think that's going to be exciting to see the city come alive. The energy is going to be incredible, and I'm really excited about next week. I hope you are too.
No, I am. I'm partnering up with you guys, and I'll have a booth to do interviews. Your lineup is one of the best I've seen, honestly. What does success look like for you? Let's say, end of this month, and we're celebrating Chinese New Year. People are asking you how you feel about this event. What do you hope you share with people?
That's the reason why we have a vision is, did we successfully execute on that vision? I think what I'd love to be able to call success is that, one, we were able to convene at scale people from around the world at Consensus, also to make sure that we've delivered on this high quality content. Does somebody have something substantive, novel, and can they say it with authority, right? And I think that's the kind of measure that we want to be able to deliver on that one. I think the second part of that vision was, were we successful as a gateway to Asia? Were people flying into here able to really get an understanding of what's happening across the region, and hopefully convincing them that they need to pay attention, just like we just discussed, right? And the third part of it was this idea of showcasing Hong Kong. Were we successful in, one, helping people understand what's happening with the industry, and the second is, was I successful in getting people to fall in love with Hong Kong and want to visit again? The answer hopefully is yes, right? And I think that in itself is a great way for us to measure whether we've been successful or not. The final thing I'd say on it, though, is I believe that Consensus, and it's kind of apt, right, in the name itself, is uniquely positioned in the industry to bring the whole kind of all the different players together. And what I'm hoping for is that it actually is a catalyst for that ecosystem growth I talked about, right? People actually finding partners to work with, maybe new ones or strengthening old ones, people finding new ideas to work on, people understanding what the key trends are, and then hopefully starting to apply either capital or energy and resources to build towards it. Like, to me, I feel like it'd be nice to be able to say we had a lot of people. It'd be great to say we actually made a difference in how our industry moves forward. And I think that's what I would love to be able to look back and be able to say we were able to help do that for the industry.
Earlier you mentioned a lot of countries see stablecoin as a store of value. I love traveling, and I've been to almost 100 countries, and a lot of African countries that I've been to, I actually have seen how they use their currencies as souvenirs, and it's fun for the visitors, but it's such a painful experience for the locals, right? So there are a lot of things I think crypto taught me, or Bitcoin taught me, that I would like to translate that to, the audience. And I think it's very important to recognize that a lot of, parts of the world or people are suffering or are struggling because of financial education and a lot of other reasons. And I just want to, know your take on this subject.
I think definitely financial education is an important thing. What's interesting is the topic of blockchain and Bitcoin and crypto has really helped to get people to rethink a lot of that and really search, a deeper understanding. Like, I would, for example, say that most people, including myself, when we first approached Bitcoin, we never thought about, what is money? Like, I never really thought deeply about how do I think about money and fiat currencies and until I came across this. And so I think this particular type of technology and asset class is a great way to kind of prod people down towards understanding finance and that financial education path further, right? The second part of it is I do think that this technology can provide greater financial inclusion, right? I think there's an element of easy access because you're now connected to the internet, that you are able to have better access to better financial products and more scalable ones for that matter. And I think that's really, really great. And I think there's certain parts of the world that benefit more than others because some places in the world don't have very convenient traditional products, right? And so therefore having this as an alternative really makes a big difference. I think the third piece, and this is something that I feel particularly strong about in Hong Kong, is that when you think about how this particular industry also is a great opportunity for entrepreneurship, One thing that I've noticed is that in Hong Kong, we have fantastic technical universities. They have fantastic technical talent, but we don't have very many of the Web 2 technical businesses here, right? We don't have, for example, a lot of developers from the big Web 2 internet companies here, and so people end up leaving if you're pursuing something that's more of a technical career or whatever it might be. I think with blockchain, with crypto, with Web3, because of how borderless it can be, depending on the application you're in, it gives people an opportunity to build global businesses here in Hong Kong. I hope that means that students that graduate from our great universities stay in Hong Kong and build their businesses here. That's kind of my hope. And by bringing Consensus over, I think the idea is to create some level of excitement for people to realize, oh, this is serious. This is not just a niche thing on the side. This actually could make a big impact, both in terms of the city, but also in terms of building businesses that are global.
And changing their families' lives and generations
Exactly.
to come. I think that's what people really want to do.
Yeah, no, completely.
That was very beautifully said. Thank you, Michael. I look forward to seeing you in Hong Kong, and if people are really interested in what we talked about and want to check out Consensus, you can check out the link down below. They gave me a discount code, so you can go for cheap. Thank you, Michael, and I'll see you again in Hong Kong, I guess.
Thank you, Bonnie. It was great chatting with you. I'll see you in Hong Kong.